Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be talking about trigger warnings and what recovery is. So you probably saw my post that I did today on Instagram talking about life doesn't come with trigger warnings. Okay, I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's the reality of life. Life doesn't come with trigger warnings, okay? So in life, things happen suddenly out of nowhere. You could get a disease and need to, or have an injury, need to have a surgery next week. And the world isn't going to stop and wait till you're perfectly calm to go in for that surgery. The world isn't going to stop until you're perfectly relaxed and got over a problem till you have to deal with, for example, the death or illness of a loved one. The world doesn't work like that, okay? That is not how things are. Because the world, in reality, is pretty brutal in terms of what happens if we look at so many areas of life. It's pretty sort of like just survival or not, okay? That's the reality. So the world doesn't work how we would like it to work, and there's no other way to say that without being sort of quite blunt about it. If you look at the animal kingdom, for example, an animal hasn't got a chance to know that a predator's coming and be warned. They just get eaten. And they're not going to get the choice whether they get eaten in front of their family, no matter what age the kids are, or no matter how painful the way they get eaten, they just get eaten. And in the world, in reality, things again aren't fair. If we want to try, if we think that the world is fair, try and get on a bus without paying and say, I'm really sorry, I'm going through a hard time, I've lost my wallet. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to care about that. So the world doesn't work like that. You try and tell an energy company that you haven't got enough money to pay your electricity bill. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to care about that. So that's the reality of how life is. And it doesn't come with trigger warnings. The world doesn't come with things saying, okay, something scary is going to happen next week. Oh, just to let you know, something that you really don't want is going to happen next week. So you've got to be aware that we need to adapt for the real world. We need to not adapt to this sort of social media world ideas that everything can be comfortable and happy and everything will just run fine, because there is no guarantees. We could work on recovery, work on our business, work on our family, and be killed next week by a bus. That could happen and does happen. So the world does have these things, and we won't be prepared for all of these. Now, we have compassion for ourselves. We give ourselves the best chances. And we've survived up until the day today, we're alive today, every other thing in life that we've ever been through, every situation, every scary thing. We've come through all of that stuff. So we can. And it's really important to be sort of direct about what's involved in life so that we don't try and sort of go with a sort of wishy-washy approach of everything is going to be fine and everything, there's no problems and la la la, because in reality in life, things may not be fine. So we've got to learn to deal with those kinds of circumstances and outcomes in life, even if they were to occur. Okay? So I accept that I could die, I could get ill, I could have many things that I don't want have happen. That could happen. I hope it doesn't, but it could. And so it's very important to not sort of like go for this whole, I need a trigger warning here, I need to know exactly what I'm doing here so I'm not too scared. It's too much comfort. We have to build up gradually, bit by bit by bit, but we can't expect trigger warnings in reality in life everywhere. Trigger warnings you see mainly in Facebook groups and forums where people are like trigger warning on sort of mildly triggering things. Now, of course, if you're about to upload a really scary video exposure to someone who's just started exposures, saying to them like, hey, I'm just about to upload a video, that's understandable. But if you're just doing it for every single paragraph that you write that may trigger somebody, that is primarily you avoiding fear of harming someone and also trying to keep everything way too comfortable. So that is the key message about trigger warnings. It's not helpful. We should be looking for what are your top 10 triggers that someone can then go and have a look at and see if they want to and see some things that triggered you, because triggers are the antidote. They are the thing that is going to get you better. So triggers are really, really important. So I think that's important. The next thing I was going to talk about was with recovery. What exactly is recovery? And I've done a lot of videos on this, but I wanted to sort of just clear that up specifically because often there's sort of misinterpretations of elements of what the recovery journey involves. So with recovery, what can actually happen is people think that recovery is this finite point that everything's fixed forever. Well, no, that's not how the world works, like what I was saying with the reality and adjusting to life and reality. So basically what happens with recovery by definition is the absence of chronic anxiety and chronic guilt. It's not having 10 panic attacks a day, just bringing it for the ride and just going along. That's not. And that makes people feel disheartened because then they think, oh my God, if that's recovery, what am I even working towards? That's not recovery. Recovery is the absence of chronic guilt and chronic anxiety and chronic shame, whatever. Now, the problem with that is that then when people have been in that state for a long time and then they have a setback or something like that, they then think, oh my God, I'm not recovered. And then they're extra hard on themselves, for example. But in reality, you will occasionally have setbacks as you're working through the recovery process. Now, I know for years now, I haven't had any long setbacks, maybe a few minutes, maybe half an hour on some triggering thing in my life that's happened, maybe at max a few hours when I've had to go to hospital for some illness or something like that and had to have a medical procedure that I've been a bit anxious about and got triggered. Rare, doesn't really happen. So my basic state long term is no chronic anxiety, no chronic guilt. Now, to think that you're going to never have anxiety again is not possible. You will have anxiety. You will get anxious at times. You're a human being. We're not trying to get rid of all anxiety. If a car pulls out and tries to run me down right now, I will get anxious initially. I'm not going to be so rational, just let it hit me. I will get anxious initially, okay? So that will happen. So we've got to be realistic about that. You're not trying to eradicate anxiety, okay? And if I suddenly accidentally kicked a football and it hit an old man, he died, I'm not going to instantly be rational. I'm going to probably at first think, bloody hell, this is horrendous. This is so terrible. It's going to be difficult to get over. And then bit by bit with the acceptance, then I would learn to have remorse and sadness for it. Even if the incident, of course, was just an accident, as human condition, we will tend to beat ourselves up. Oh my God, you shouldn't have done that. Oh my God, you're so terrible for doing that. And going down that path of thinking that we will naturally do as a human, because humans will be irrational. Humans are fallible. They will make mistakes. That's really important. So the goal of recovery is the absence of chronic anxiety and the absence of chronic guilt longer term, but not being hard on ourselves when we have a setback or a slip up now and again, because this will happen on the journey. People often say to me online things like, Rob, I never want to be, once I've recovered, that's it, it's gone, it's cured. No, that leaves you set for a setback, because the same as an alcoholic who says, I'm not an alcoholic, I will drink again in the future, but I'm just going through a period. When they are an alcoholic, it won't work like that. Those pathways are there in the brain, and I would imagine that OCD has got a genetic predisposition there, which will be there, and so you will not get to a place where you're like, I've got no OCD at all. That doesn't matter, because 99.999% of your life, you won't be experiencing it, the same as somebody who's got barely asthma that gets flared up very rarely. It's not going to make much difference to your life at all. So that is the goal. And being aware of that and seeing that is really key, because otherwise it becomes a self-defeating cycle as you're constantly coming down hard on yourself for unrealistic expectations. So I think that's really important. So I wanted to cover that, but I had to be quite blunt with those things, because otherwise I get messages from people saying like, trigger warnings, this is good to do trigger warning. And then I say, how many trigger warnings are you doing? They're like, I do trigger warning with most posts if it's something talking about harm OCD, and that becomes not good, because that becomes a cycle of avoidance. It becomes a cycle of trying to create a fake world. That's what a lot of this stuff is. Trying to create a fake Truman Show-like world where everything is protected and everything is perfect and everything is safe and comfortable, and that ain't reality. That isn't the world we live in, and that's sort of often suggested with a lot of that thought stuff, where like nothing in life is really scary. All things are thoughts, but things scary do happen in life. We can get a disease out of the blue. We can lose our parents out of the blue. These things can happen. So we need to have a robust recovery plan, even for these scenarios when they do occur. So yeah, that was just going to be a short video covering those key points, as I thought they were really important for you guys to see and learn about. And I will be back on doing another Instagram live tomorrow or the next day, covering all the questions and answers you want to ask me about OCD. Guys, great to see you, and I will see you on the next Instagram live. Take it easy.